Hey everyone, thank you so much for coming back to my channel. In this video, I'll be showing you how to take your favorite top and copy it into crochet so it fits you perfectly. If you don't know me, hi, my name is Lala. I'm a crochet designer who loves turning yarn into just about anything, from stylish wearables to cute amigurumi and everything in between. So make sure to hit that subscribe button so I can keep creating free tutorials and sharing new ideas. Let's start crocheting! You're gonna grab your hook and yarn and make a slip knot. How to make a slip knot? You have to put the yarn on your palm, then wrap it around your finger like this to make an X shape under your finger. Then take the longer side of the yarn and put it around your finger like this, in a way that it will make a letter Y shape on your finger. Then you're gonna take the left arm of the Y shape and pass it over your finger. It will make a loop. Then you're gonna pull your finger up and tighten the loop up. Then you're gonna insert your hook into the loop and pull the longer strand out of the two here. Not the short one, the long one. Pull it so it will tighten up around the hook. Then we're going to chain. So to chain, you're going to pass the hook under this line of strand here between our thumb and our index finger. So insert your hook under the yarn. See the way that the yarn wraps around the hook, and use the hook's head to pull it into the loop we just made. And this is one chain. Let's start with making 20 chains. Yarn over and into the loop. Yarn over and into the loop. And then I'm going to show you how many chains you have to make in order to make your perfect fit top. You're going to take your favorite top, the one that fits you the best, especially from side to side, in the waist area, and then you'll have to make a foundation chain with enough chains that goes from side to side of this top. In order to make this top, your total number of chains has to be multiples of 3 plus 2. To fit me, my top has to start with 57 chains, and I'm adding 2 to that number, so it's going to be 59. And if you don't get the exact number of chains with multiples of 3, it's better to always downsize than to upsize, because the stitches will stretch. So let's say if you're not sure if to make 45 chains or 42 chains, go for the 42 and then add 2 chains, which will be 44. Let's meet again when we have our total number of chains in our foundation chain. When you have the right number of chains for your size, multiples of 3 plus 2 chains, what we're going to do is start working into the back loops of the foundation chain. If you tilt your foundation chain like this, you'll see we have little bumps on the back. We're going to insert our hook into it. We're going to start into the second chain from the hook. So this is chain 0. We never count the loop on the hook. This is the first chain from the hook, and this is the second one. We're going to insert our hook into the back loop of the second chain from the hook. So tilt it a little bit so you'll see it. And insert your hook into the back loop. Yarn over into the left loop only. And when you have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over into both loops. And you just made a single crochet. We are going to start with a stacked single crochet. So what we're going to do is insert our hook into this vertical left bar of the single crochet. Insert your hook into this bar here. You can help with your hands if it's a little bit challenging. Yarn over into the left loop only, and yarn over into both loops. And this is a stacked single crochet. The stitch up here is the stitch that we're going to insert our hook into next row. So take a stitch marker and mark it if you're a beginner, so you won't forget which stitch is the first one. Next, we're going to skip 2 back bumps. See here we have 1, 2, and we're going to work a double crochet into the third bump from the last stitch we made. So skip 1, skip 2, and work a double crochet into this one. To work a double crochet, we're going to yarn over, insert our hook into the bump. I'm helping with my fingers. Yarn over, into the left loop only, and now you have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over into the left 2 loops only, and when you have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over into both of them. This is our first double crochet. We're going to make 2 more into the same hole we just crocheted into. So yarn over into the same hole, yarn over, back into the loop, 3 loops on our hook, yarn over into left 2, and yarn over into left 2. Let's do that one more time into the same hole, yarn over, into the hole, yarn over, back into the loop, yarn over into left 2 loops, and yarn over into 2 loops left. And we just made a granny stitch. A granny stitch is 3 double crochets in 1 stitch. And this is what we're going to repeat all the way to the last chain we have in the foundation chain. We're going to skip 2 bumps and work a granny stitch, 3 double crochets into the 3rd bump. 1, 2, and 3. Let's continue making our granny stitches all the way to the last chain, and then I'll meet you back again. Don't forget to skip 2 stitches. I'm on my last 3 stitches. I'm going to work my last granny stitch into the last stitch, and it might be a little bit challenging to insert your hook into the last back bump here, but it's worth it, so I recommend struggling with it. Let's work 3 double crochets into the last stitch. And here we have our first row in our top. To start row 2, we're going to turn our work like this, so the back of the stitches is facing us. We're going to chain 1, and then we're going to work a stacked single crochet like we did in the beginning of round 1 into the first stitch of the round. This is now the first stitch of the round. We're going to insert our hook into the stitch, yarn over, back into the loop. When you have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over into both of them. This is now a single crochet, and then we're going to complete the stacked single crochet by inserting our hook into the vertical left bar, yarn over into the left loop, and when you have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over into both of them. And what you're going to do next is insert your hook between the granny stitches. See the space, the little triangle space we have here? We're going to make a granny stitch into this space. So yarn over into this space between the granny stitches, yarn over, back into the loop, yarn over into left 2 loops, yarn over into remaining 2 loops. And again, you can also mark this first stitch of the round with a stitch marker and work 2 more double crochets into the space. Once you complete the first granny stitch, you have 3 double crochets into this space. We're going to skip the next granny stitch and do the same into the next triangle space. Yarn over into the space between the granny stitches. And this is what we're going to repeat, just making granny stitches between 2 granny stitches in the previous round. I'm going to complete my row off camera, and when I get to the end of the row, I'll see you back again. When you got to the end of the round, you're going to make a granny stitch between the first stacked single crochet we did in the beginning of round 1 and the last granny stitch. So yarn over into this space right here. You can take out the stitch marker now. And then we're simply going to repeat round 2. We're going to turn our work, chain 1, and work a stacked single crochet into the first stitch of the round. And then work granny stitches into the spaces between the granny stitches of previous round. And this is it. You're going to repeat row 2, 3, 4 until you reach row 18. If you'd like your top to be longer, you can add more rows. So I'll complete my rows off camera, and I'll see you back again when we reach row 18. Once you got to row 18 and your panel looks like this, you're going to put it on the top that you used from the beginning of the video and see if it goes up to under your armpits. If it doesn't, you can add more rows, and if it's too many, of course, you can frog as many rows as you need to make it the right fit. So going back to the last stitch we made, we're going to turn our work and then work 3 chains. 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to skip the first space between the granny stitches and go straight to the second one. And only then we're going to work a granny stitch. And this will make the area for our armpits, right under the arm. Then we're going to continue working granny stitches between the spaces as usual. And we're going to do it up until we have 2 spaces left before the end of the row. Alright, now that we have our 2 spaces left, the one between the granny stitches and the one between the last double crochet and the granny stitch, what we're going to do is work a granny stitch between those 2 granny stitches. And then we're going to double crochet into that last double crochet of the round. Next, we're going to turn our work and like we started previous row, we're going to chain 3, skip this first space and go right into the next space and work a granny stitch. Continue working granny stitches between the granny stitches into the spaces, and I'll see you back again when we've made the last granny stitch. I'm making the last granny stitch between the granny stitches. And once you're done, what you're going to do is double crochet into the 3rd double crochet out of the 3 in the last granny stitch, this one here. So yarn over into the loop, yarn over into the loop, pull through 2 and pull through 2. And now you're going to repeat row 20 for 4 more rows. If you want your top to be longer and have better coverage in the chest area, please add more rows. I'm going to complete my rows off camera, and I'll see you back again at the end of row 24. Now that we're finished making decreased rows, we'll have this curve here for under our armpit, at the other side as well, of course. We're going to pick up from where we left off. Now we're going to make the strap. So you're going to turn your work. we're going to work a stacked single crochet, of course, in the first stitch. And then we're going to skip the next granny stitch and work a granny stitch into the next space. Then we're going to make another granny stitch into the next space. And now we're going to turn our work. We're going to work a stacked single crochet into the first double crochet of the first granny stitch. Work a granny stitch between the granny stitches. And then work another granny stitch into the next space. And then we're going to repeat row 2 until we reach row 25. So turn your work, work a stacked single crochet into the first stitch of the round. And work a granny stitch between the granny stitches into the space. And into the next space between the granny stitch and the stacked single crochet. I'm going to complete my rows for the strap off camera, and I'll see you back again at the end of row 25. Once we've finished crocheting 25 rows, our strap will look like this. To fasten off, we're going to chain 1, grab our scissors and cut off the yarn, leaving enough tail to attach the strap later. Pull away the hook and tighten the stitch up. Now to make the second strap, what we're going to do is turn our work, grab the new edge, grab the new tail of the yarn and make a slip knot. Grab your hook and insert it into the first double crochet of the last round. Then put the slip knot on the hook. Into the stitch and chain 1. Now that we've attached the new yarn, we're going to insert the hook into the same stitch and work a stacked single crochet. Single crochet and into the left loop. This will act as our first double crochet. Then we're going to skip the first granny stitch and work a granny stitch into the next space. Move over to the next space and work a granny stitch in it as well. Then you're going to turn your work and repeat what you did for the previous strap. Start with a stacked single crochet, work a granny stitch between the granny stitches, keep repeating row 2 until you reach row 25 like we did in the first strap. When you're done crocheting 25 rows on the other strap, just like we did before in the first strap, we're going to chain 1 and cut off the yarn, leaving enough tail to connect it to the back later. And now let's get into the back. What we're going to do first is grab a stitch marker and put it into that space here.
For me, it's row 18. Then we're gonna take our yarn back again and make a slip knot. Then you're going to insert the hook into the first chain in the foundation chain we did at the beginning. Insert your hook into the chain, put the slip knot on the hook, into the loop, and chain 1. Then we're going to insert the hook back again into that same chain and work a stacked single crochet. Then you're going to skip this granny stitch here and work a granny stitch into the next space here. And then repeat it into each of the next spaces until you reach the last space here. Skip the granny stitch and work a granny stitch into the space. When you got to the space where you put the stitch marker in, you're going to take out the stitch marker and work one last granny stitch into the last space. Next, we're going to turn our work. Work a stacked single crochet into that first stitch. And then work a granny stitch into each of the next spaces between the granny stitches, just like we did when we did the straps. I'm going to work my granny stitches and then I'll meet you back again at the end of the row. Now when you got to the last space between the double crochet and the granny stitches, we're going to work one last granny stitch into that last space. Then turn our work and repeat row 2. Work a stacked single crochet into that first stitch of the round. And then continue working granny stitches until you hit that last space. You're going to continue working rows until you can fit it around your body using stitch markers. Don't make too many rows so the top won't be too loose on you.
What we're going to do next is check if the top is fitting us before sewing. So you're going to take at least 7-8 stitch markers and also count 4 granny stitches from each side and then attach the straps to the back of the top. Once you made sure the top is good for you, we can take out the stitch markers from the side, put the hook back into the last stitch we made. Then we're going to chain 1 and cut off the yarn. Pull away the hook to fasten off. Next, you're going to have to count how many stitches you have in the last row you made. You might have a different number than me, so the best is to just count how many granny stitches you did in the last row. Of course, including the stacked single crochet at the beginning of the round. I made 9 granny stitches plus 1. It means that I have 28 stitches. What we're going to do is work the same number of stitches we have in one side of the top onto the other side here. So if I have 28 stitches here in my last row, I'm going to work 28 single crochets on this side of the top. First, we're going to attach new piece of yarn, make a slip knot, or do any other method you like, just like we did with the straps. And here you can see at the bottom the foundation chain we started from. We're going to insert our hook into the very first chain. Put the slip knot on the hook, pull the slip knot into the chain, and then chain 1 to attach. Then we're going to work on the side of the granny stitches 2 single crochets for each double crochet. So here we have 1 double crochet on the granny stitch. Insert your hook into the stitch and work 2 single crochets. Don't be scared to fake it a little bit here. The most important thing is that you have the same amount of stitches you have on the other side. It doesn't have to be mathematically correct, just you have to have 28 stitches. And 28. Next, you're going to take the 2 sides and put them pressed against each other like this. Take both sides into your hand, and we're going to slip stitch the 2 sides together. What you're going to do is insert the hook into the first stitch in the row closer to you, into the next stitch of the row further away, yarn over, into the 2 stitches. When you have 2 loops on your hook, grab the left one into the right one. And since we made sure we have the same number of stitches on each side, you're going to do the same number of slip stitches like you did for the previous single crochet row. So let's say if I had 28 stitches on the single crochet row, now I'll be making 28 slip stitches. And once we got to the last slip stitch, what we're going to do is chain 1, cut off the yarn, and pull away the hook to tighten the stitch up. Now we're going to turn our work and do the exact same thing with the straps. Here it's a small amount of stitches, so we don't need to make a row of single crochets. We can just slip stitch the stitches into the back of the top between the stitch markers. So we're going to turn our work and we're going to use the strand that we left from the strap. So first, take out the stitch marker from the strap only. Leave it here so you know where to stitch it to. Insert your hook into the first stitch of the strap, into the back of the top, yarn over, and chain 1. This will count as our first slip stitch, and do the same to each of the next stitches. Doesn't really matter where you put the hook into in the back of the top, as long as it's both into the strap and also into the top. When you got to the other stitch marker, take it out and make one last slip stitch. Then when you're done, you're going to chain 1 and pull away the hook and tighten the stitch up. And repeat the same thing we did here on the other strap. And now finally, once we have our 2 straps attached and also the 2 sides of the top, what's left for us to do is simply take our darning needle and weave in any tails left. As more as you're going to weave it in, the more secure it will be. Now we're going to flip the top so we won't see the seams of the attachment points. And this is it, you guys. You just transformed your favorite top into a crochet fit. I really hope you liked this tutorial. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And of course, you can also find me on Instagram. Tag me if you made this top. I'll see you next video. Bye!